Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day. Through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Ameen.
Fourteenth Amendment to the Constitution, ratified in 1868 following the Civil War. As barbaric as it may sound today, the black slaves, prior to the conclusion of the Civil War, were legally considered to be property, with none of the rights or privileges of free-born people, only duties. The money interests took advantage of America's desire to free the slaves, and found a way to use the swiftly adopted post-war constitutional amendments to enslave all of the people. The deceit is in the wording of both the 13th and 14th Amendments. You will note that the 13th Amendment provides that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall exist within the United States. But why the emphasis on involuntary servitude? Isn't it the same thing as slavery? Sure it is. But they had to mention the concept of involuntary servitude because they wished to retain another type of slavery, voluntary servitude. Voluntary servitude is an ancient and established concept. It was the way serfs became subjects to their lords during feudal times in England and other European countries. It was a way for free men to earn a living at a time when all property was held by a select few, and thus anyone who wanted to farm and support their family had first to agree to be subject to a lord of the land. Our forefathers hated this concept and designed our Constitution to exclude titles of nobility, making all Americans sovereign. The 14th Amendment turned the intention of the founders on its ear by making voluntary servitude a requirement for former slaves to gain the rights already guaranteed to free-born United States citizens. When the slaves were released from their involuntary servitude following the war, their status was changed from that of being property to that of being a person. But being a person still entitled them to none of the rights associated with citizenship. So the 14th Amendment ostensibly was written to provide the former slaves with the same constitutional rights of free-born American citizens, but only if they agreed first to become subject to the jurisdiction of the corporate United States. Making oneself paramountly, that is, first subject to the jurisdiction of the laws of the United States, however, limits access to parts of the Bill of Rights, as we'll explain in a moment. But first remember, anyone who voluntarily subjects himself to the laws or jurisdiction of another is, in every way, obligated to abide by the terms of any contracts or laws established by whomever establishes the rules of the contract. In simple terms, this meant that the former slaves became subjects first to the United States, and secondly to the state in which they lived. They had no sovereignty whatsoever. This status had never existed in the United States prior to that time. The 14th Amendment created a new class of citizenship in the United States, a second-class citizenship. Up until 1868, every American was a paramount citizen of their state, and by virtue of that, also a citizen of the United States, with full individual sovereignty as guaranteed by Amendments 9 and 10 in the Bill of Rights. But so-called naturalized citizens, or 14th Amendment citizens, are paramountly subject to all laws of the United States, and, having no status as free-born citizens, have no access at all to the unenumerated rights retained for the people by Articles 9 and 10 of the Bill of Rights. That's because, in order to get any rights at all, they had to subject themselves to the jurisdiction of the corporate United States, which left them no unenumerated rights. The only rights they had were those specifically written into the Constitution.
Well, statelessness is a reality for more than 12 million people across the globe, according to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. Disallowed access to a nationality, hundreds of thousands continue to endure a marginal, shadowy existence, feeling the generational impact of a lack of documentation on their basic human rights and freedoms. To shed some light on the issue, we have in our Pretoria studios Liesl Muller. She's an attorney in the Statelessness Project for Lawyers for Human Rights. Good afternoon, Liesl, and thank you for your time on the PM News Desk.
Good afternoon.
Break it down for us, Liesl. What is statelessness exactly?
Well, in terms of the international conventions on statelessness, a stateless person is someone who is not considered to be a citizen of any country in the world. So the person is without a country to recognize his rights, and he is effectively rightless and without a state to protect its rights also.
This effectively leaves a human being without a nationality. Tell us how one's rights are violated without nationality or without citizenship.
Yes, a person without nationality also has no access to enabling documents like a birth certificate or an ID document. In South Africa, an ID document is a very important document because you will use it to rent a home to stay in, to legally apply for a job, or to access healthcare services. So the ID document in South Africa is something that you really need to, in fact, do anything in this country. And then also one cannot participate in the political community. You cannot vote or run for office.
From what you're saying, Liesl, it becomes clear that human rights are simply unenforceable without a nationality. But statelessness, though, is not new. Although recognized by the international community for decades, it still remains a big human rights challenge that's really not getting the attention it deserves. Why is this, Liesl?
Yes, nationality is basically the right to have other rights. In South Africa, I believe that it is due to a general lack of understanding of the problem. We are also in a state of denial that the problem exists. Our project is advocating for the recognition of this problem and also for the signature of the international conventions on statelessness. I think the first step towards recognizing these people's rights would be to acknowledge that there is a problem and then take it from there to develop a mechanism to protect them.
Lisa, let's talk quickly about the new immigration regulation. Now, the aim of that is to regulate the migration of foreigners who are coming into the country. But how will it impact on refugees, asylum seekers, and more especially on those whose work permits are about to expire?
Well, the new Immigration Act it doesn't really have an effect on stateless people per se, because there is already no permit for them to expire in their case. For our refugees, the clients that we have, the new immigration laws makes it much more difficult for a refugee, the spouse of a refugee, to stay in South Africa on a spousal permit, which is very worrying. It also makes it more difficult for people who are not married to live together in South Africa as dependents.
How critical, Liesl, is the need for training in addition to law reforms? Because it does become clear there's a misunderstanding about who a stateless person is and how, and it does look like right now there are no guidelines in the law on how to identify these people and what rights they are entitled to.
Yes, it's very important for us to come up with a mechanism within our law to identify firstly a stateless person, and then also to give us a mechanism by which to protect the stateless person's rights. So it would be almost the same as the refugee determination process, and once a person is considered stateless, he would also have an enabling document enabling him to travel and work, and also have all the other human rights that citizens have.
In a nutshell, Liesl, how do we solve the problem of statelessness in the country? Surely this is not just a South African issue. It needs a cohesive regional approach.
Yes, definitely. In my opinion, birth registration is the most important thing that we need to focus on in order to prevent statelessness. If we don't register the children who are born in South Africa consistently, we will have people who, when they turn 18, when they become adults, they will not be able to prove their citizenship. They will not be able to prove where they were born or the identity of their parents. Also, for foreigners who were born in South Africa, once that person goes back to his country, will need the birth certificate from South Africa in order also to prove the country of his birth. So we need to really approach this, as you said, on a regional basis. Also for people who are South African citizens born in neighboring countries, when such a person returns to South Africa, he will need to produce a birth certificate from that country of origin, which means that in countries where the birth registration rate is very low, it will be difficult for people who are born there to access citizenship in South Africa.
Thank you, Liesl Miller, an attorney at Lawyers for Human Rights. Thank you for your time on the PM News Desk.
To be talking with two brothers who have been in the Moorish Sign Symbol of America for a number of years. To my right is Brother G. Cook Bey, and to my left is Brother I. Cook Bey. I will allow them to give you their titles and so on. I'd like to start out, though, by asking, first of all, to Brother G. Cook Bey, how did you happen to come into the Moorish Sign Symbol of America?
Well, I come into the Moorish Sign Symbol of America till one day my brother I. Cook Bey, I asked him concerning about this prophet, and he told me there's a man down there he's on State Street, was teaching at the time, said we are not colored people or Negro. And he said, we are Asiatics. I said, that's so. Then I said, I go with you to the temple then, at 3603 Indiana Avenue. Then I go the first night, that during 1925, and I enter into the 3603 Indiana Avenue. Then I have a chance to see the prophet. Then I heard of him through my brother. When he come from the back part of the building, come to the front, we all officials, they stood up. And when I looked at him, I said, within myself, I said, I never seen a man look like this man before.